So this video is going to help you do page 132. A problem just like page 132 or 133 is going to be on your test, so make sure you can do one of these problems. 133 is going to be homework, so let's do 132 together. So here's 132, and all I've done is copied the function on a piece of paper so I can write a little bit bigger so you can see all my work. So here's the function that says graph the above rational function, finding using the below information. You need to do so and show work to receive credit. All problems must have work attached to them. You have 10 minutes to complete this task. This should take you about 10 minutes when you're proficient at it. And then steps 1 through 8 are worth 10 points each. The final graph is worth 20. And then there's a hint. X plus 6 is a factor of the numerator. This will help you. So here we go. When I look at the numerator, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out an x. And actually I'm going to pull out a negative x to make my life easier. So I'm going to start factoring, and when I start factoring and pull out my negative x, I'm then left with x to the third plus 4x squared minus 20x minus 48. And then it told me that x plus 6 is a factor, so I can do some synthetic division. And I'm going to put negative 6 in my house, and I'm going to factor what I have left over. So I have left over is a 1, a 4, a negative 20, and a negative 48. It's in order, nothing's missing. Drop down the 1. 1 times negative 6 is negative 6. You add these together and get negative 2. Negative 6 times negative 2 is positive 12. Negative 8. Negative times negative is going to get you a positive 48, which gets you a remainder of 0, which should happen because we know that this was a factor, so I have to get a remainder of 0. So now I'm left with x squared minus 2x minus 8, so I need to factor that. I need two factors of negative 8 that add and give me negative 2, so how about x minus 4 and x plus 2. So now I'm going to rewrite what I have, and before I do that, actually, let's factor the denominator real quick. When I factor the denominator, they have a 2 in common, and then I'm left with x squared minus 4. This is the difference of two squares, so you have x plus 2, x minus 2. So step 1 in this process is to get the numerator and the denominator all factored out. So I have my negative x that I started with that I pulled out, and then I have my x plus 6 in my numerator that I pulled out, and then I have my x minus 4 and my x plus 2. And on the bottom I have 2, x plus 2, x minus 2. And if you're like, hey Gidry, how is it you know what to do? All I'm really doing is, if you go back to page 123 that looks like this, I'm just following these steps step by step pretty much. So step 1 was I factored, and now I factored. The next thing it says on that page is that anything that cancels out is a whole. So let me grab a color really quick. This x plus 2 and this x plus 2 are going to cancel out. So if I take that x plus 2 and I set it equal to 0, that means x equals negative 2. I'm going to have a whole. So if I go to my paper over here, I have a whole at negative 2 comma something. I have to find that something. And so all you're going to do is I'm going to plug this negative 2 in to all my x's that are left over. So I'm finding f of negative 2 equals a negative makes a positive 2, a negative 2 here makes that a 4, a negative 2 here makes that a negative 6, all over 2 times negative 4. And you can do it in your head, or you can grab a calculator. I'm going to opt for the calculator. Oops. Typed it wrong. That would definitely get me the wrong answer. So all I did was type the 2 times the 4 times the negative 6 over the 2 times the negative 4, which is what I have right here, and you're going to get 6. So you know that your whole's at negative 2 comma 6. So if you go over here to your paper, write a little 6 there. Okay, so these were wholes, so they can't be anything else. That means that, I'm going to grab another color. That means the stuff left over in the bottom has to be my vertical asymptote. So I'm going to go back to my paper, and I have a vertical asymptote of x equals 2. The next thing, and I'm just working down the paper, the next thing you have to do is find the horizontal asymptote. Horizontal asymptote is from BubBot and ECC, so I'm going to go back to my original. This was a big on top, so it's a bottom. It's not 1 degree bigger, so we're not going to have a slant asymptote. This is actually 2 degrees bigger than the bottom. So technically speaking, there would be a parabolic asymptote. And we're going to go ahead and find that. So, because on this paper it says slant or other asymptotes. So I'm going to do my 2x squared plus my 0x minus my 8. Make sure you put in your missing term. And then I'm going to have my negative x to the 4th. Oh my gosh, it's going to be really pretty when we do this. To make 2x squared look like negative x to the 4th, you have to multiply the 2 by a 1/2. And actually it's going to be a negative 1/2 x squared. So negative 1/2 x squared times 2x squared is going to get me a negative x to the 4th. This is going to be 0x cubed. Half of 8 is 4, and negative times the negative is going to be a positive x squared. And then we're going to subtract the entire thing. Those cancel out. Negative 4x cubed plus 16x squared. Drop down the plus 48x. To make 2x squared look like negative 4x cubed, I need to multiply by a negative 2x. Negative 2x times 2x squared is going to be a negative 4x cubed. Negative 2x times nothing is going to be nothing x squared. Negative 2x times a negative 8 is going to get me a positive 16x. Subtract these, those cancel out. 16x squared, 48 minus 16 is positive 32x. And you can drop down your 0. To make 2x squared look like 16x squared, I need to do plus 8. And then anything after that's just going to be a remainder. So there's my parabolic or other asymptote. So I'm going to write that on my line. So y equals negative 1/2 x squared minus 2x plus 8. And then it says I need to find my y and my x-intercepts. To find your y-intercepts, you let x be 0. So to find these y-intercepts, the easiest thing to do is go back to this original problem, because you're going to let all these x's be 0. So 0, 0, 0, 0 over stuff. 0 over stuff is just 0. So you know without doing any math that your y-intercept is 0, 0. Which also happens to be an x-intercept. Oh, sorry, you can't see what I'm writing. 0, 0 also happens to be an x-intercept. So we can write it down here, but I'll show you where it comes from. So if you take this numerator right here, this was a whole, so it cannot be an x-intercept. So all the rest of this right here are my x-intercepts. So 0 equals negative x, x plus 6, x minus 4. So this is going to get you 0, 0, negative 6, 0, 4, 0. So if I go back here, I'm going to write down my negative 6, 0 and my 4, 0. And for horizontal asymptotes, this was big on top, so none. And then I have to go back, I have to fill out my domain. Your domain involves two very important things. This thing right here and this thing right here. These two pieces go back up here, and they are the boo-boos that you cannot touch in the domain. So I'm going to start at negative infinity, and I go along, and the first one of these I touch is negative 2. So I have to jump over negative 2, and then once I jump over negative 2, I have to go to 2, and then I have to jump over 2, and then I can go to infinity. Okay, so now the last thing we have left to do is fill in this table. And it's completely okay with me if you use your calculator to do this. And we're actually going to do it as smart as we can. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually opening up a new graphs page, and I'm going to type my function. Not because I want to copy down my graph, but because it'll make it really easy for me to make a table. So all I'm doing is typing my function into the graph and just double check. So I have negative x to the fourth minus 4x cubed plus 20x squared plus 48x. On the bottom I'm going to type 2x squared minus 8. It's going to think, and you should get a graph that looks something like that. And then you can either do control table, or you can do menu, trace graph, and now you can type any number you want. So take a second with your friends, fill out this table, and then go through and graph all these pieces. And then you're going to go back to Edmodo, and we'll talk about if our graphs match or not, or where we might have made a mistake.